Hi, I'm Paula Peace. I'm the pianist and artistic director of the Atlanta Chamber Players, and it's a privilege to welcome you to our second cycle during this 2010-11 concert season of Rapido, a 14-day composition contest. This year, we're privileged that we've expanded from the 9 states of the southeastern region as in the first cycle, and we've added partnering ensembles in New England and the Midwest. Joining us this season have been Boston Musica Viva, based obviously in Boston, and the Fifth House Ensemble based in Chicago. And each region in October 2010 held their own judging and performing competition concerts and chose a regional winner. Today, in January 2011, we have convened in Atlanta to hear these 3 winning regional pieces and to choose our 1 national first prize commission winner.
My long-range goal for Rapido is to have it become a significant event in the world of classical music. I'd really like to see these composers that enter this contest, and ultimately those that win it or not, have opportunities presented to them to move on further in the world of music.
The idea of this competition is fantastic. Competitions are inherently problematic in my mind, in that it's so difficult to decide who a winner is in this kind of situation. There are many sports analogies that work with art, but it only goes so far, and really ultimately it's not about winning or losing in a musical endeavor. But the great thing about this competition is that it gets these composers together, they hear each other's music, it generates all of this new material. We hear these performances of new work, the fact that it gets traveled around the country, it's exhilarating. And it was a great joy to be here today and witness it.
Well, my initial reaction to the idea of the Rapido contest was quite positive, mainly because I like writing quickly myself. I don't always do that, but it's a nice contrast to, you know, the kind of snail's pace work. And I think what happens is that when a composer is under the gun or having to write something in a short period of time, there's a different resource that gets tapped. Sometimes, well, I can't predict what it would be for somebody else, but I know for me it usually means more immediate melodic profile in the writing, perhaps more clearly defined contours and other aspects like rhythm or whatever. And it forces one to accept those basic musical instincts that that might get kind of sanded away or filed away if they're continually worked on and worked over.
I think the idea of having to write a piece in 14 days is terrific, because the thing about creativity in general that I think is a little bit easy to ignore is that much of it is about creating restriction. It's sort of the idea of creating something from nothing is one aspect of creativity, but the other aspect is you have to put boundaries around the thing that you create, and the fact that there's this time limit, I think, creates a fantastic sort of pressure cooker in which the composers involved in it can do their work within that limit.
It's very interesting that our required instrumentation was flute, and it can double alto, flute, and piccolo, clarinet, doubling bass clarinet, cello, and piano. And the required form this cycle was a suite of miniatures or short contrasting movements.
For me as a composer, I consider the first rehearsal to be the last part of the composition process, because during this time you hear it, how your music translates through the instruments in a live setting, and then I had to make some adjustments, dynamics, some dynamic changes, balance issues, articulations and so on. So after we adjusted those little things, I'm very happy with how the piece turned out. For me as a composer, it was also amazing to hear your pieces, you know, like and other people's and composers, and like in the first round, and I think we all learn from each other, and this is the fascinating experience to be immersed and see how you guys approach the same instrumentation. I think the most exciting part about this composition versus other compositions, when you can have pieces of different instrumentation, is to see how composers can approach this very extremely specific thing, what the instruments and the miniatures. Right. You know, so I remember during the first round when I was hearing like the other pieces, and I was just fascinated, like because notes, actually, and the most interesting thing is for all of us, I think that we all wrote it at the same time.
Yeah, cool.
We had all the week or the 2 weeks, so it's like a snapshot of the exact time that everyone was doing the same thing. It's not, you know, and then we are surrounded by the same world events happening, you know, the same news.
What appealed to you about the Rapido contest? Why did you enter it?
Well, I thought it was an interesting proposition, and also knowing being familiar with the Fifth House Ensemble in Chicago, I had a lot of confidence that it was going to be done very well, and so it was easy to become involved in it, and it was very interesting to do.
I think the fact that this had to be composed in 2 weeks was more liberating than it was limiting in a lot of ways. Initially I would have thought, I mean, if you'd asked me a year ago if writing a piece in 2 weeks would have been easy or difficult, I would have said like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. But because of the way that this is set up, where you get this assignment on a Monday morning and then you just go to town on it, there wasn't really enough time for me to wonder if I could do it or not, or to pre-compose very much, or to think too much about, to wait for the muse to come or anything. It was more just, I'm doing what I do. In the first rounds, when you could feel that how interested the audience was and how
how they were receptive and how curious they were about the pieces. And, for a composer, I think it's fascinating to hear back from the audience members that they told you what they thought about the pieces.
Yeah, that does help a lot.
And,
I feel like there's nothing more important than in modern music than making it relevant and making it approachable for people, like without watering it down, but making it something that people can have access to and have a stake in. You know what I mean? And so Rapido does a really good job of saying, like, this is music that we think is good. What do you think of it? Come support it. Come to the concert, and we can, you know, all be participants.